Hello, hello. Excuse me. I'm a huge consumer of caffeine, at least coffee. Um, and I I don't do much tea. I do some chocolate. Um, the book uh, goes over some early stories about the discovery of the stimulant properties of coffee and about bouncing goats. Um, there was a movie you probably haven't seen, George of the Jungle, and George was trying to get his beloved to come back to him and followed her to the big city. And he was told to stay home, but he tended to do whatever the television told him. And this is a small segment. I used to make buttons. I sold buttons. My club sold buttons that said Java, Java, Java. So here's a little YouTube video that gives you a flavor of George of the Jungle, which reminds me of the goats.
So the low has moved offshore, high pressure's built a ridge in, the weather is absolutely gorgeous. If you're not outside, you ought to be. Ooh, me? I mean you.
So that's the beginning of a cute scene. Um, it's a wholesome movie. You can share it with the family. Oh, stop. What else is? Well, we'll do tea when we get to it. So the discovery of coffee, and there are other stories. The coffee houses threatened the establishment in England. They weren't so threatened by pubs, because if you went to a pub, you drank alcohol, and eventually you became kind of stupid and ineffective. But if you went to a coffee house, that didn't tend to happen. So they were thought to be hotbeds of seditious talk. Um, they tried to ban them, but did not succeed. Like temperance, there's a women's petition against coffee. Um, and there's, you know, drinking and whoring and doing all sorts of bad things. Um, I I don't find coffee drinking very threatening. Uh, I wish I don't for some reason I don't like Starbucks. Northern Light downtown is good. It's nice to hang out and drink coffee. I'm sure you don't care, but uh, I have an espresso machine at home, and I start my day with a big mug of 4 shots of espresso, and then steamed silk, unsweetened, and that's how I start my day. I used to drink coffee all day long, and I'm one of those that was so used to drinking it, I could drink it right before bed, and I would still fall right asleep. The Don't think I'll start rubbing it into my vanishing hair, but that's an interesting story. The and coffee is associated with the our Revolution secession from England, and there's a discussion of the types of beans, and there's raw coffee and roasted coffee. Raw coffee has a long shelf life. Roasted coffee does not. So the way my world works, each shot of espresso is ground fresh right before brewing. And a former machine of mine provided espresso for a chemistry department faculty study on sources of caffeine. Espresso has less caffeine than you might expect. And there's the two primary types of beans. I use a blend. Decaf, I never got into that. Now it's, if you're going to drink coffee, and there's an espresso machine making, those are big. That's a lot of, those are big cups. And it looks good. You're getting crema there. That froth on the top is really cherished. If you're going to be a barista, you should learn to deal with that, and then to be able to draw on it if you have steamed milk. So then there's tea, and there's a disturbing story about the founder of Zen Buddhism ripping off his eyelids so he wouldn't fall asleep while meditating again. But as a gift, we were given tea, and the how it's harvested, and it's very labor intensive. You do it over and over, and you only select the best, freshest little shoots, and it's good. I went through a tea period, and those are well maintained tea bushes there, and the East India Tea Company, not really a force for good, I vote, oppressing local populations, but they did generate a lot of tea. And there's a story in here somewhere about the invention of the tea bag, and somebody came from Great Britain and saw how the United States merchants were handling tea, and was appalled because they were storing it in a way that really destroyed the flavor, and they came up with better ways of storing things, and made tea taste good again. And there's taxation. I remember taxation was important in the repeal of prohibition, and coffee houses, tea, coffee, and chocolate, East India Tea, American Revolution, Tea in the Harbor, Stamp Act, and what followed it. Taxation really upset some people, no doubt about it. There's the Boston Tea Party, and I guess I love coffee because I love America. And there's plucking tea, and every 6 to 10 days in warm weather, you get new branches and more plucking. And the what we consider normal tea, dark tea, they're rolled and dried and oxidized, and are relatively dark. But there's also green tea, and what you put in your tea it does vary. Oh, I meant to look for this. I'm sure I won't find it now. But there was a story um, about people getting esophageal cancers, and there being a plethora of those, I think, in one of the Scandinavian countries. Um, but it doesn't seem to happen as much in England. And there was a theory that uh, England had less trouble with tea causing cancer because they added milk or cream, and that bound a percentage of the tannins, which is is what makes things brown. And the tannins, particularly with really hot tea, um, you there is possibly some risk. I'm not, I haven't seen that research in forever, but there was a time when there was fear of tea and esophageal cancer. You might go look that up. I I I should have, but I just tried to and it didn't work. But so then there's different kinds of teas and tea bags, and uh, theophylline is only in very small amounts, not uh, probably a significant chemical in tea, but it could help people with asthma. Now, there's a link I've given you. When I was in the integrated science building, which I did not enjoy, it was very isolated from the psychology department, and nobody would come visit. Um, my next door neighbor was a legitimate Irishman, and my office was right by the microwave and sink and everything, and I would see him making tea all the time. And he turned me on to this, and this reminds me I should buy this. The Irish consume a pretty huge amount of tea, one of the highest tea consumptions on the planet Earth. And Barry's tea has been made in the little land of Ireland since 1901. And it's really good. Family owned, Ireland, 1901. And it is tasty. And I should buy it. I just got out of the habit. One thing, though, which was clear from interacting with him, is temperature is very important in terms of what's extracted. I would use my espresso machine, which has a wand for hot water that comes out at a certain temperature. He would microwave the heck out of it, and his tea was much more bitter than my tea. But he was from Ireland, so he had to know what he was doing. And we'll get to the Dawn report, which has come up several times in this semester later. And here's chocolate, and we've already dealt a bit with chocolate, and for quite a while to figure out how to make uh, how to turn these beans into the kind of chocolate that we like to eat. Hershey's comes up in a list of coffee or caffeines in this chapter. It if you're into it, it it's it's very addictive, or it's very consumable, and like a bit like tobacco, chocolate became popular because wealthy people uh, got into it, and Maria Theresa, Louis the 14th had a thing about chocolate, and then other people ate it, and the rest is history. And there were concerns about health in chocolate, but that didn't hold up. And where we can grow it, it has spread quite a bit. And how it's processed, I had a video on that. It's part of a series on cooking, and fermentation is often part of the process. It's pretty amazing that people figured out how to do that. Um, and there's chocolate powder, and then there's fat and cocoa butter, and eventually we get to sweet modern chocolate. Um, the typical, is this in here? No. Yes, chocolate. There's Hershey's milk chocolate, which really doesn't have a lot of caffeine. European chocolate is much more bitter and has a higher caffeine content. And then there's different lists of caffeine. K-cups, boy, what a bad idea that was. Impossible to recycle, easy to use, but boy, talk about pollution. So there's a bunch there. My espresso is not on that list. I don't know where it would fall. It would not be, it'd probably be up near Starbucks. And then there's teas, and the tea I recommended to you is not there, but black tea. The chai latte has a lot of caffeine. Starbucks knows how to make things that people want to consume, no doubt about it. And then soft drinks, and of course we're going to get into Coke here, Coca-Cola, and consumption. There we go. There's consumption of Coke went up a lot during Prohibition. Tonic. It was promoted as treating all sorts of things. So you have cola nuts and cocoa leaves, and nowadays the cocoa leaves have had their cocaine extracted by our friends in the federal government. Fountain Drink, Georgia. So the cocoa leaves and cola nuts, and the caffeine. I have a tough time getting worked up over caffeine. I get up in the morning and I post things about science, medicine, and technology on Facebook pretty much every day. And in terms of health, coffee, which often is associated with caffeine, but it doesn't have to be the causal variable. Coffee is very complex. Uh, I would say that there's more evidence supporting health than disease with coffee. And the federal government has changed its opinion on whether caffeine can be added. So there's a more types of sodas. Boy, Pepsi Zero is really packing. Mountain Dew used to be famous for having a high caffeine content. And then there's energy drinks. I used to know someone quite well who lived on energy drinks The good news is she didn't die, and I think I provided you with a link on energy drinks. So here's a Dawn report that includes energy drinks that focuses on energy drinks, actually. And 1 in 10 energy drink related emergency department visits results in hospitalizations. That's not good. It really is not good. And just recently, somebody who drank a lot of energy drinks had to be hospitalized for like weeks, I think, but didn't die. Somebody who, later we're going to get into no-dose, and some college student looked at the no-dose tablets and said, oh, there's blank, blank milligrams. And he got pure caffeine from a supplier and took pure caffeine at the no-dose concentration for the entire pill, neglecting to discover that only a proportion of the pill was really caffeine. He died. Don't try that at home, please, because I love caffeine and coffee, and I don't want anyone to ruin the reputation. So there's energy drinks, and they're often combined with alcohol. An Irish pub bar I used to go to for music, and some Guinness. Yeah, they'd have refrigerated Red Bull, and students were drinking that stuff with alcohol all the time. I don't think that's brilliant. So there's no-dose. It apparently contains 200 milligrams of caffeine, but the pill is bigger. It's not pure caffeine. And then you may or may not know it's in some analgesic. Now, analgesic means without pain. These don't quite do that, but Excedrin migraine, Midol, Bayer back and body, Anacin, they all contain some caffeine, as does some weight loss products. 80% of Americans regularly use caffeine in some form. Sure, that almost has to be true. Boy, I still get upset seeing Red Bull. She just drank so much of it. Okay, how's it work? It's old. We've had it for a long time, but exactly how it works, we didn't really understand. And it takes about 30 minutes for peak. I forget the half-life, but oh, there we go, 3 hours. Is there such a thing as a caffeine use disorder? You can look at that. And the DSM will not include caffeine use disorder, although research shows that as little as 2 or 3 cups of coffee can trigger a withdrawal marked by tiredness or sleepiness. There's also the classic caffeine headache, which is hard to treat with virtually anything other than more caffeine. And this book is pretty down on caffeine. They're not as fair and balanced as I wish they were. And then, does it really help? It wakes you up, no doubt about that. But does it help with cognitive tasks? And the cognitive tasks, the data are not overly compelling. And adenosine, there we go. So the adenosine receptors are blocked by methylxanthines, and adenosine, unlike GABA, which is just ubiquitous, but adenosine is inhibitory. And if your adenosine receptors are hit with adenosine, things kind of calm down. You get sedated and sleepy. If you have caffeine in your system, the adenosine can't get the receptor, and you are more awake. List of discussion of what caffeine does in different doses. Autonomic nerve centers in the brain. That's a fair amount of caffeine. And then heart and the medulla. It's complex. Your basal metabolism can go up, which is one of the reasons that it is included in that at least that one dietary supplement. And causes an admirable fever. It enters the brain like a word I should have looked up, bacchante. Upon its attack, imagination runs wild, bears itself, twists like Pythonus, and and in this paroxysm, a poet enjoys the supreme possession of his faculties. But this is a drunkenness of thought, as wine brings about a drunkenness of the body. So it does nice things, I think, still. So then, again, it's complicated whether it improves performance. It definitely offsets fatigue. Not magical, but it's not awful. And panic attacks are very real, and triggering one is something that should not be done lightly. And the results are interesting because they reveal individual differences. Now, you heard it here. All people are not alike. All people don't respond to drugs alike. It varies from person to person. And caffeine can help with headache and migraines, we've already talked about. Caffeine, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, inconsistent. Uh, I love the sobering up. Give caffeine to a drunk and you end up with a wide awake drunk. There was a television show, it was a comedy, and they had a brewer, they brewed beer in their garage, and they started selling beer with caffeine. So if you were the designated driver, I guess, you drank that, which is a myth. Don't do it. And all right, here, Debbie Downer here. Cancer, maybe, but it's not compelling. Reproductive effects, there's probably some effect there. Heart disease, there's some data indicating there's a problem there. Caffeine is not terribly toxic, and overdose deaths are extremely rare. 100 cups of coffee to cause death. Yeah, unless you're that stupid college student who bought pure caffeine and used it as a pill. And there's, can it have negative effects? Heart arrhythmias, palpitations, GI problems. In several cases in which serious disease has been suspected, symptoms have miraculously improved when coffee is restricted. Nice stories, but not compelling science. I vote. And that's it. It's a brief chapter, fun to dance to. I think the book is a little bit overly negative about caffeine. Uh, it is widely used, and coffee, I think, is not only safe but actually can help, is associated with good things. I'll try to find a link to that and add it. Okay. See you next time.